So first and foremost, we have muted all of your lines. That way we reduce background noise, and we also want you to be able to still move about your house, or if you're driving and listening, or if your doorbell rings, the dog barks, don't worry, we can't hear you here on our end, and we'll mute those lines throughout the entire webinar. But we do want to hear from you. So if you have questions, feel free to type them in at any point. There is a chat box, it says Q&A box on the bottom of your screen, where you can type in your questions at any time. There's no such thing as a silly question. We find in our caregiving community that everyone's question has been thought of by another caregiver at one point or another, and the answers to those questions can really help everyone along their caregiving journey. So please, again, don't hesitate to send them in at any time. You can submit your question anonymously. There is an option when you do type in your question to do so. So look for that if you would like to submit an anonymous question. And then we are recording today's webinar, so you don't have to worry about taking notes, and we'll email you out the recording of today's live chat after the chat is completed. We usually send it out within 24 hours. So that way, if you want to go back and listen to a certain part of the chat that you really enjoyed, you can do that, or forward it on to somebody else who you think might benefit from hearing about today's topic. So those are the housekeeping items for today. So let's jump into the topic. Today we're going to be talking about caregiving during the holidays. So with the holiday season upon us, there's so much to look forward to. The decorations, the food, the time with family and friends are certainly things we get excited about this time of year. However, for family caregivers who are already strapped for time, the holidays can sometimes be overwhelming. It's important to also consider our loved ones living with Alzheimer's or other dementias. How can we keep them engaged in the holiday festivities, and how can we host family gatherings while still making sure our loved ones' needs are met? So those are the types of questions we're going to address today, and many more questions. And we're very fortunate to have with us an expert on caregiving and on Alzheimer's, David Troxel. David is an internationally known expert in Alzheimer's disease and memory care. He has worked for over 25 years in the Alzheimer's care field, developing and teaching care techniques as a consultant, writer, and speaker. He co-authored the book, The Best Friends Approach to Alzheimer's Caregiving, along with many other influential books and resources related to Alzheimer's care and training. So we want to welcome David back to our live chat. David, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Lakelyn, and I guess happy holidays going forward.
I know, I can't believe that Thanksgiving is already next week. Time is flying by. There's so much to get excited about, but I know, as I just mentioned, David, we know that caregivers are stressed for time in general, especially, you throw in all those holiday festivities and the preparation for the holidays, and it can be really overwhelming. So I'm really glad that you're going to be able to join us today and talk about this topic and share some of your words of wisdom, tips, and advice with our listeners.
Thank you. Thank you. I think, to paraphrase Charles Dickens, holidays, I think, are the best of times and sometimes the worst of times. It can be a time of celebration and reminiscence and tradition, but also kind of a poignant time where sometimes caregivers recognize some of the losses that come with dementia. Some of the things that maybe dad always carved the turkey at Thanksgiving and now he can't. So some of these little things can be very impactful on family members.
Yeah, that's so true. And it's not till you're kind of in the throes of it all that you start to realize, maybe things aren't as they once were, but it's also a great opportunity to really meet our loved ones with Alzheimer's and dementia where they are, and maybe create new traditions or modify the old traditions so that they can still participate. So I know we have some great questions that people have already written in, and we have more coming in through our live audience today. So do you have any other initial thoughts, David, before we kind of just jump right into questions?
Sure, Lakelyn. Well, I guess I have a couple of thoughts. I think the first thing that is very much, reflective in the contemporary view of memory care and dementia is to live life. You know, go ahead and try things and do your best to keep the person engaged and involved as much as possible. If you're part of a faith community and the person always enjoyed going to church around some of these religious holidays or to your faith community, you know, try to go. Maybe pick a time where it's an off time, so there aren't 500 people there. Maybe see if the faith community would send someone to your home or other care setting. So I think keep people involved as much as you can. I think it's a great opportunity to, you know, even if mom can't cook the full pumpkin pie the way she used to, or your dad would maybe do a certain part of the meal, at least have them be with you while you're preparing. Ask them to taste and advise, hey, Dad, taste this dressing. You're the expert. Does it have a bit too much salt or pepper, or how can I fix this up? You know, asking opinion helps people feel that they're valued. I always think too, Lakelyn, that the holidays are a time for a lot of sensory experiences. You know, the music. We know that song lyrics and music live in a different part of the brain than words and language. So I think celebrate music of the holidays. You know, I have to confess that part of me is a bit cranky that there's already holiday music playing before Thanksgiving at the stores and on the radio, but I kind of still enjoy it. You know, it's fun to hear, you know, I'm dreaming of a white Christmas or whatever it is. So music, all of that involvement, keep the person as active as possible. And we'll share some more ideas as the conference call goes through. But I will offer one more quick thought, which is adapt as needed. As I was mentioning about the faith community hours, maybe you're holding on, but the truth is that because of dementia, your family member just can't quite do everything they've always done. So, you know, adapt as you go. And as I say, you know, maybe not go to every holiday party you used to, or if you go, just go for an hour instead of 3 hours. Maybe you want to join the family dinner, but dad would be a bit agitated. Maybe just go for dessert or go for the beginning. Be flexible, be creative, and you'll have a winning holiday season.
Those are some great initial thoughts there, David. I actually was just talking with a family caregiver this morning, and her father is in a memory care community, and she said that, you know, over the last couple of years they've changed their tradition, and they bring Thanksgiving dinner to him, and it's kind of just their new normal. She said it's not how it always was, but it's their new normal. So they kind of took that mindset of, you know, we're going to adapt and make it, you know, the best experience possible for her dad. So I think, you know, you gave some great examples of ways that families can do that and still keep an aspect of the tradition. So those are really great tips to get us started. Well, we have a couple questions. We had some people write in ahead of time, and then we also have a few coming in from our live audience that we have on the call today. And so if you've just joined us or jumped on the call late, we are taking questions live for David, and we're talking about, it looks like on the screen we're talking about health tips for women caregivers, but that's a typo. We're actually talking about caregiving for the holidays. So if you have any questions around caregiving around the holidays, or how to make your holiday celebrations more enjoyable for everyone involved, to the caregiver, your loved one with Alzheimer's or dementia, please feel free to write those questions in. There's a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. So we do have a question that came in from Mary. She says, how do I celebrate with friends and family while my mom is so unhappy? She doesn't enjoy children or gatherings where there is lots of noise. Yet I want to be with her and my family. So this is probably a scenario that many caregivers tend to struggle with. David, do you have any thoughts for Mary and how her and her family can enjoy this celebration, yet hopefully help make her mom happier, or make sure her mom's needs are met?
Well, that's a great question and a really, really good challenge right off the bat. I guess I have a couple of ideas about that. I think number one is, you know, even if your mother is a bit grouchy about everything, you know, maybe she was always a bit grouchy about everything. I have sometimes found people with dementia will still enjoy sitting back, even if they're kind of muttering or making a few comments here and there, and kind of watching the world go by. I am thinking too about environment. Maybe you can kind of place her seat a little bit toward the end of the room or side where she's not quite in the middle of the action, so perhaps suggest the environment. I think kind of get a script going with the family. Grandmother, we're so happy to have you here. We love you, and things like that, just to kind of reassure her. But if the behavior is disruptive, or if you can really see that she's just not happy or getting agitated, that's where I think, again, it's so tough, but you may have to kind of break some of the traditions. You like having her there, but perhaps maybe having her sit in a nearby room and watching a video of the Sound of Music, or playing with a dog or cat, or sitting with another relative, maybe that would be the wiser course.
Yeah, those are some great tips, David. So yeah, sometimes moving your relative to another room might seem like a hard thing to do because you want them to be part of the celebration, but it might be better for a few people to come and talk with your loved one, every half hour or so, have a few people come in and visit, so that way that they're still engaged but not as overwhelmed by the whole family. I know if it was my family, we have, like 20 plus grandchildren and it's chaos, and so I could see how that would definitely be overwhelming, just drawing on my own family experience. So I'm sure that would be a challenge as well. And speaking of children, do you have any tips maybe for Mary on how maybe she can get the children in the family to maybe either kind of respect grandma's wishes to maybe have a more quiet celebration, or ways that maybe they can have an intergenerational connection throughout the holidays? Any tips there?
Sure. What a beautiful question and beautiful idea, Lakelyn. I think, so many children, I mean, many of the youngsters, they don't know who the president is either, and they don't, they're very in the moment. And we know that intergenerational programming is often wonderful. And so I think if you could almost set up a little project or two, maybe grandmother might enjoy doing some painting with the children, or maybe they'd read a book to grandmother, or she'd read a book to them. Perhaps they'd enjoy, again, watching some kind of concert or movie together, or maybe even wrapping presents or organizing things. Things like that can be very, very positive. So I think if you can get the children involved, or sitting outside with grandmother, that can be lovely, if you're in a warm climate.
Those are great suggestions. Yeah, that wouldn't work for us here in Omaha, Nebraska, unfortunately,
No.
But if you were in a warmer weather state, I'm envious of you that you can sit outside
Right.
on Christmas.
Exactly. But I think the intergenerational programming, and there are actually some wonderful children's books that have been written for children about memory loss. So I think it is an opportunity, almost to create a little schedule, and perhaps if grandmother is sitting in a room somewhere, maybe different people can come in and just do some one-on-one with her.
Those are some great suggestions again, David. Thank you so much. Well, Mary, we hope that helps you in creating an enjoyable family celebration that includes your mom, and hopefully helps to make everyone happy and filled with the holiday cheer and spirit. We had another question come in from Rhonda, and then we talk kind of a lot about Alzheimer's on these chats, and we do recognize that there are other types of dementia. And Rhonda's husband has Lewy body dementia. So she says, is there anything particular to know in regards to this type of dementia, and perhaps even as it relates to the holidays? So any thoughts for Rhonda there, David, on,
Sure.
on Lewy body?
Well, thank you for that question, Rhonda. Lewy body is probably the second or third leading cause of dementia. It has some very telltale symptoms, kind of some movement disorder, a little bit like Parkinson's. People with Lewy body dementia typically have hallucination, and it can either be visual, seeing the big orange fluffy cat in the room that isn't there, but believe it or not, the hallucinations can also be even smells and sounds. So that, along with the movement disorders, other issues, it can be a tough road. Sometimes these hallucinations are kind of benign and playful. Other times they can be rather frightening. So a couple thoughts I have in terms of just general care for Lewy body would be that if someone is seeing something that isn't there, make sure that you're kind of, entering their world. And if mother says, there's a big orange cat in my room, and how did that get there? You don't want to say, Mother, there's no cat in your room. There never has been. You're always imagining this. You want to say, Mom, oh my gosh, how did that rascal get in there? Well, let's get to the bottom of this and let me see what I can find out. People with dementia, and Lakelyn, I know you share this view, are really just like the rest of us. They have the same needs, emotions, feelings. And if they're upset about something, they want to be heard and listened to. They want to be reassured. So in general, I think with Lewy body dementia, that's a significant part of it. There's some other elements of Lewy body dementia about care that you might want to be aware of. I'm sure the Alzheimer's Association has some good information. People with Lewy body, they seem to be very sensitive to sedation and psychotropic drugs. So, you want to be careful not to medicate them with those medicines unless you really have to. And to use an old nursing phrase, start low and go slow. I would say with Lewy body dementia and the use of psychotropics, in general, hugs are better than drugs. I can't, to the other part of the question, I can't think of anything necessarily specific to Lewy body and the holidays. I will once again say, though, that music is magic, and headphones and music can be something that can calm a person and change a mood if they're agitated. I would say that, again, people with Lewy body, they can be a bit wobbly. So if you are going to a lot of new places, again, watch for falls, things like that.
Thank you so much, David. And we actually had a woman from the Lewy Body Dementia Association on our live chat earlier this year. So Rhonda, we did record that live chat. So if you visit our helpforalzheimersfamilies.com website, you can view the recorded version of that webinar, which might be really informational for you. And then the Lewy Body Dementia Association, they also have a website which has great resources. And so I'll just chat that website back to you, Rhonda, but it's www.lb as in boy, D as in David, A.org. So the initials of Lewy Body Dementia Association, lbda.org. So we hope that you find that to be helpful, and we hope that you can go back and listen to that live chat because it provided some great information. So thank you so much,
I'll make one.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I'll make one quick comment. I remember years ago, one of my first gentlemen I worked with who had Lewy body dementia was named Marty. And Marty would see three little people and talk to them who weren't there. And one time Marty said to me, David, do you see my friends? Do you see these people? And I was kind of at first a little bit unsure how to respond. And so I finally said, Marty, I'm really sorry. I don't see your friends, but I believe that you do. And that seemed to very much satisfy him. So just a good generic line, if someone is hallucinating and asks you about it, I think it's okay to be honest, but to acknowledge that it's very real for them.
That's a great point, David. Yeah, that validation can be very comforting to those that are seeing, maybe you mentioned people or animals, and we a lot of times talk about stepping into their reality. So that's very real to them. So we want to acknowledge that. So thank you so much for that information. And Rhonda, we hope that that's helpful to you. And if you're listening to today's chat, we are taking questions live for David. So if you have any questions, please feel free to type in your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. There's no such thing as a silly question. Our questions help everyone on the call, so don't hesitate to type a question in. So David, we did have a question from Donna, and she says, I'm bringing my mom home for the day from a long-term care facility. Do you have any tips to help make this run smoothly? And David, I know you do quite a bit of work in memory care facilities and facility settings, so you're the perfect person for this type of a question, but any suggestions for Donna on how she can help with that?
Well, thank you, Donna, and I will share with you that my mom passed away in 2009, my mom Dorothy, and she actually had Alzheimer's, and she lived in memory care for 3 years. We had in-home help for many years, then finally it got to the point where she needed to be in residential care. And even though I work in the field and I'm a huge advocate of socialization and its importance, I wondered, is this going to work for my mom? Because, she was always so social and kind of like she had a British accent, but she was kind of an early version of Martha Stewart. And so I was really surprised that she actually did very well in assisted living. And of course, just like the question, a holiday came around and my dad said, well, why don't we invite, mom home? And so what we did, Lakelyn, is we got out her best Wedgwood china. We actually kind of prepared a special little event and party for her. We invited a few neighbors over. And I have to say it was very successful. So anything you can do to kind of, bring out some of the old traditions. We had some old photo books. And of course, we welcomed her. And so I think things like that can be very, very good. My memory is that after about 2 hours, I think she was kind of ready to go back to her home, which, was sort of poignant for us. She really almost, I think, had forgotten that the old house was her house originally. But I think have some traditional food, her favorite, if she loved hot chocolate with marshmallows. Just try to create a very warm, caring environment. But don't fall into the trap of like, Mom, do you remember this? Do you remember that? Because sometimes they don't always remember their own home, and that can be bittersweet. But I applaud you. I think it's great to involve them in the holidays, get them home. And one little tip I have, my mom, Lakelyn, just loved the drive, just going for a drive. And she would read the street signs, and I'd put on the 40s channel on my satellite radio in my car. And so sometimes even that can be part of the journey and be very pleasant.
That's a great point. Yeah, those Sunday drives can sometimes be so soothing, and especially depending on the part of the country you're in, you might have beautiful snowy landscapes to look at, or beautiful palm trees. So, and all the Christmas lights. So I'm sure that would be definitely or enhance the whole experience. So that's a great point. David, what would you say like about the time of day? Because I know I talked to a lot of family caregivers who maybe always had a Christmas dinner celebration, but maybe their loved ones kind of at their best mid-morning. Would you suggest that family members consider the time of day that their loved one is maybe most alert or most engaged, or do we want to try to maintain their routine? Any thoughts on those types aspects of maybe bringing them home from the facility, or even if they already live at home? Should we try to stick to that routine, or is it okay to kind of deviate from the norm?
Sure. Well, Lakelyn, as you can imagine, everybody's a bit different, and certainly, I've met people who probably do fine with coming to a dinner. But when you think about the world of Alzheimer's and dementia, everything's more difficult. They're trying to navigate their way through the day. They are trying to understand what's being said to them. Doing simple tasks, simple chores take a lot more energy. So I do find, Lakelyn, to your point, that often by mid-afternoon, people are really getting very fatigued. There's a word we don't really use a lot anymore, but sundowning, this idea that when the sun is going down, agitation goes up. And I tell you, I've read lots of theories. It's related to the lunar cycle of the moon or something like that. I just think people are getting tired. So I suspect, Lakelyn, you're onto something that, perhaps, move that dinner to a nice lunch if you really want Mom or grandmother to attend. I think earlier in the day does tend to be more successful for people with dementia.
Thanks so much for those thoughts on that, David. I think that, it can be helpful to consider when the time of day for the celebration. So, and I know sometimes families want things to stay the way that they've always been. And that actually leads us to this next question that Beverly is bringing up is, she says, I'm trying to go through the motions of being happy during the holidays, but family members don't understand this horrible disease, and they don't help in the care of my mom. They want things to be like they used to be, and it causes tremendous stress. She says, but I'd like to close my eyes and actually have the holidays just be over with. How can I help my family understand? This is a really tough situation for Beverly. So David, do you have any thoughts? I know on these chats, we get lots of questions about from family caregivers about helping other family members understand the disease, and especially around the holidays when we're all gathered together, people might be seeing their loved one, months, or they hadn't seen their loved one for months, and maybe there's been a significant decline, or maybe Mom's having a good day and they're thinking, there's nothing wrong with her. So I hear all those types of comments from caregivers, and it can be frustrating when you're the primary caregiver and doing a lot of the caregiving work.
Sure.
So any thoughts,
Yeah.
Beverly?
And by the way, like when I have to smile, I guess the word is smile, but I mean, I can't tell you how many support groups I've been in over the years where there's an adult daughter who says to me, or even a daughter-in-law sometimes, my brother flies in once or twice a year and spends 24 hours, and mother's delighted to see her son, and the golden boy kind of scenario, but he's not really helping out with my care. And then he'll sometimes even say, gee, that wasn't too bad. Mother doesn't seem too bad. And why are you exaggerating all of this? So I do feel for the person, asking the question, and for all of you on the call when you've had these issues with siblings and family members. So a couple of thoughts I have. If you are the primary caregiver, exercise your authority. Don't feel that you have to cave to the family pressure and be involved in everything if you don't want to be. If you do have siblings flying in or other siblings, you might say, hey, I need a day off. I'm not able to really participate this year in the New Year's party. You're welcome to come and get mom and have a lovely day with her. So again, kind of establishes some boundaries for yourself. I think this is also a good time to have a family meeting and ask for a family meeting and try to do some planning and projection for the next year. Where will we be? What kind of decisions do we need to make? And frankly, the caregiver might even say, what if something happens to me? If I get hit by a car, what is the game plan here? And if you don't feel that you can organize that kind of family meeting by yourself or do it with the siblings or key family members, maybe invite a trusted outsider to come and facilitate. Maybe you have a rabbi or a priest or a clergy person or a lawyer or even a good family friend. But I think this is a great time to say, hey, we need to make a game plan and look at some contingencies. So as much as guilt can be a big factor in families, I totally get it that sometimes the caregiver who's doing all this work can see the holidays as yet another burden. So do something for yourself if you can. Take advantage of other family members. Ask them very specifically to, take mom for the day or to come over and hang out for the day, and then check into a spa. I give you full permission. Go check into a spa and take care of yourself.
Those are some great suggestions, David. Yeah, the family meeting is a great suggestion, because often everyone is gathered anyway, and so that's kind of a good time of year, especially going into a fresh calendar year as well, to kind of level set with the family and explain. And there's some great resources. The Alzheimer's Association has great resources. On our Help for Alzheimer's Families website, we actually have a family caregiver training that overviews the disease and the symptoms that present because of Alzheimer's and dementia. So that might be something you can pass along to family members to maybe help them understand the complexity of the disease and asking for help. I know that caregivers sometimes feel like they can't ask for help, or when people do ask or offer help, they can't think of something that they can ask for help for. So sometimes I tell caregivers, especially around the holiday season, think of 3 things that somebody could do for you, so that the next time somebody asks, hey, how can I help? You can say, oh, actually, you can do X for me. So sometimes that can be helpful too, thinking ahead of time. What are the things that you need help with as a caregiver? What are some caregiving tasks you'd be willing to give up? Or maybe it's that respite that you mentioned, David, taking time away from the caregiving situation can be so helpful. So we hope that all of those tips are helpful to you, Beverly, in your family get-togethers this holiday season. And speaking of having a hard time asking for assistance, Jennifer just actually wrote in and asked, I have a hard time asking for assistance to help me with my mom, as I don't want to burden anyone. Do you have any tips on how to request help? So David, do you have any additional thoughts on that topic?
Sure.
It's a great question, Jennifer. We get that question quite often on the chat.
Well, let me first tackle the word burden, because that is a word I often hear, and I've sort of reflected on that word. And I have to say that when I was involved with my own mother and father's care, my mother had Alzheimer's, my mother did not, but I was, there for him in his last few years. I actually viewed it as a privilege to be part of their life. I actually found great satisfaction in being there. It made me happy to help. Now, my experience may not be everyone's experience. Some people may have not had a very good relationship with family members. There may be a lot of old issues. Some people just may not have that kind of personality. But don't assume that everybody feels that way. I think a lot of friends and neighbors are so happy to help and actually feel good when they can offer that support. And the ones who view it as a burden won't really follow through or won't even offer to begin with. So to kind of break that mindset from my point of view. And then I think, Lakelyn, you alluded to this very much. I think be specific, brother, hey, it would so help me if twice a month you went to Costco and got 3 boxes of Depends, or if I can send you a list or email you a list of some things that need to be done. So be very specific in your request. Can you get the following things for me at the store? Can you find somebody who could put in some handrails in the shower and this? I need them by a week from Friday. So be very specific in your request. And will everybody follow through? No, but hopefully most of them will.
Yeah, that's a great point, David, is not assuming that it'll be a burden to ask for assistance. I think that, again, it's hard to ask for help or to admit that you need help as a caregiver, and maybe you don't have a lot of family around, or maybe they're long distance relatives, and so you maybe are having a hard time thinking, okay, what could they even do for me? But I think some of the great things about this global world that we live in is, online bill paying can be done from a distance, or online grocery orders or Amazon orders can be done from a distance. So there's ways that you can find to help people feel involved in the caregiving situation, even if they're miles away. And even just a simple request like, could you call mom every Sunday and just, engage her in conversation? That way I can maybe throw in a load of laundry, or take a break from, engaging with her for an hour while you talk to her on the phone, things like that. Or FaceTime is a great form of technology we have available to us today. So those are some great suggestions, David. And thank you, Jennifer, for your question. I hope that you find that helpful. Okay, so we had another question come in. This question comes from Lori. How can I make the holiday peaceful and calm for my mom? And how can I help make sure that she enjoys time with the family? I know we've touched on this a little bit, but we haven't really talked about the peaceful and calm side of things as much. So any thoughts for Lori, David?
Sure. One thing that I have written about in my books that I think is so important, and certainly most of you, I'm sure, on the call know, but I think it's very powerful to write down a life story for the person with dementia, or at least some, 10 or 20 personal preferences, achievements, history. And so I think one thing that you might do to kind of create this feeling of peace and calm and even celebration is to work on updating or writing your family member's life story. Did mother win the teacher of the year for 3 years in a row? Was she famous for her pumpkin cheesecake recipe? Did she, as a youngster, go to Hawaii for a couple years and learn how to surf and kind of have a rebellious period, or did your very stodgy and conservative dad, when he was in his 20s, ride a motorcycle across the country and, join a motorcycle gang for a year? All the kind of funny, interesting stories that are there. So I think to kind of create a scrapbook or create some memories will be very powerful, and can also help celebrate the person's life and help a caregiver in the future. If someone comes to the home, they want to know a lot about the person. So I think that's great. I think the other word that I really like that I think also ties into the holidays is the idea of the word ritual. And certainly rituals are very much part of faith communities and traditions. But I think a lot of families have rituals as well. So, if you've always, had a certain meal on a certain day, or gone to, trim and cut your Christmas tree and set up your Christmas tree, or other kinds of traditions, certainly celebrate these. And maybe even create some new ones, create a little English tea party for your mother, do some things around New Year's. You can go on the web and look under New Year's superstitions and holidays, and maybe your family eats black-eyed peas for New Year's for a year of good luck. But doing some things like that can be very, very powerful. One of my friends loves to do gratitude trees this time of year. If you Google that, it's basically where you take some branches in the garden and put them in a vase and have some little post-it notes or heart-shaped notes and ask everybody at a family dinner what they're grateful for. And then you take these little pieces of paper and put them up on the gratitude tree as sort of a symbol of hopefulness and gratitude and friendship. So I think in terms of the sense of peacefulness and calm, I'd say, if your family member does have a religious background, spiritual readings of some kind, spiritual music, religious music, maybe their spirituality comes from rainbows and nature and having time outside, taking a lovely walk in a park or going for a drive through a beautiful area. All of these things, I think, to create ritual and tradition and meaning can kind of, I think, give the sense of peacefulness, happiness, and calm.
Thank you, David. I like your idea of rituals. I mean, I know in my family, I'm thinking of rituals that we do and how it involves all generations in these rituals, and so those suggestions that you gave are giving me some ideas of, is there a new ritual that our family can even start this year? So great suggestions, and we hope, Lori, that is helpful to you. We do have time for a few more questions, so if you have a burning question, please chat it in our question and answer box at the bottom of your screen. But Suzanne asks, how do I hold it all together during the holidays, getting it all done and hoping it's good enough? And I think that really kind of the underlying question here almost is, how do I care for myself this holiday season? How do I hold it all together? So I know self-care is a big term that we talk about when it comes to caregiving. So any tips or thoughts for Suzanne on this topic, David?
Well, I think, Lakelyn, we've talked about some of these things. I'd love to hear your view even, because I know you've done a lot of work with your staff about self-care. How do I hold it all together? Wow. I think that's a question care partners, family members ask all the time, even if it's a holiday. So I think, again, taking a break, a little respite, giving time for yourself is really very powerful. And again, maybe thinking about the future, about what kind of help you might need. There are families I meet who just are determined to do everything by themselves, and they, you introduce them to some in-home help. Oh, maybe later. You should introduce them to a day center. Oh, maybe later. You say, hey, maybe you should tour some assisted living buildings just to see what the future might be and make a game plan. Oh, not quite yet. Well, the maybe later can come up in an awful hurry if somebody has a decline in health or a care partner gets sick. So again, this is a time perhaps to do some planning, look at services. The benefit of using services is it's actually very good for the person with dementia. I like to say the brain loves company. The brain loves company, and its socialization is so powerful. And so, you might be the most dedicated daughter or spouse or partner, but if you're trying to do it all yourself, the person often gets isolated. So you want to have and hire that lively in-home caregiver, go to an activity-rich day center, or find an assisted living building that could really create this social environment. So be proactive, think about the future, and of course, in the immediate moment, do what you can to take some time out and take a breath, maybe even consider some respite care right after the holidays to give yourself some time off.
David, those are all really great suggestions. I was going to bring up, possibly getting some help, whether it's, professional caregiving so you can get away to do your shopping or even just rejuvenate, or whether it's having we mentioned earlier, those relatives that are in town, let them take your loved one for the day, those types of things. But when Suzanne asked, how can I get it all done? And sometimes family caregivers, it might be time to prioritize, what holiday traditions are really important and what can maybe we skip this year? Or if you're so overwhelmed, do you really have to do everything? Does everything have to be absolutely perfect? Or can we just live in the moment and make messy cookies with sprinkles everywhere? Really, is it about, the look and feel. We live in kind of that Pinterest, Instagram, social media culture where everything has to be so perfect. But at the end of the day, it's really about creating those memories and spending that quality time together. So I'll just add that as one little last tip for Suzanne. Maybe it doesn't all have to get done. Maybe it's just really those important things that she should be focused on.
And you know, perhaps you'll get some criticism or some wistful requests or feelings from family members, but maybe this is the year. It's time just to stop, you know, doing the whole turkey and meal on your own. Maybe it's time to order it from the grocery store, from Safeway or Kroger's or Boston Market. You know, maybe this year is not the year for you to make the pies. And so I like the idea of prioritizing and just doing some things that can make it easier for you.
Thanks, David, for those additional suggestions. And I know that store-bought sometimes is even better than what I can make. So that's a great suggestion. We did have a question that just came in from Nick. I think it's a good question that probably a lot of people have. So Nick says they just moved their mom into memory care this week, and they hold a holiday luncheon at the facility. Would you recommend us all gathering together there to celebrate at once, or having smaller groups visit over the course of a couple days? I think that's a great question. David, any thoughts for Nick and his family on that?
What a great question. And, you know, part of me thinks both. I mean, you know, I don't know if the particular building has a limit on how many people you can bring to the dinner, but, you know, I think all of the above. I think to have a kind of big turnout for the big party is lovely, and your family member would enjoy it. But I think to your, you know, kind of the real meaning of your question, I suspect that having 20 relatives be there to have dinner with grandmother, she won't be able to connect with people in the way that she might if 3 or 4 are coming, you know, just to have coffee with her and sitting and maybe having a bundt cake or some pie and having that celebration. So I think small is probably good. I think that is probably my instinct, but certainly don't be afraid to come to the party. I would try to do both if you could.
Thanks, David. Nick, we hope that you find those tips to be helpful, and we hope that you enjoy time with your mom over the holidays. And then Betty wrote in, she says, how do I manage if a person with dementia is at our house for Christmas and doesn't want to go back to the nursing home? This is a tough one, Betty. David, any thoughts for Betty and her family on this question?
Oh yeah, very tough. And you know, it's interesting because certainly there are people who, in my experience, love to go out for rides, love to go out for lunch, love to go to a baseball game, you know, early on with their dementia, even for a few innings. And it's really okay for them to go back to the you know, facility to the building. There are people where it's World War III to get them back in the door. I think if you know that, I mean, candidly, I suspect that may be the time where you need to move your traditions into the building and not bring them home if it's so upsetting for them to come back. I think otherwise, I think be empathetic, you know, understand that they may not want to go back. I think be honest, but in a supportive way. You know, Mom, I'm so sorry. I know that that's not your first choice, but this is where you need to be right now. And one of the phrases I like is, you know, Mom, you need to build your strength. This is the best place for you. The doctor wants to be there. And you know, often, even though it's a struggle, you know, normally you're able to get them back. And once they're there, all's well. All is well. But it is tough. So I think use your common sense. I mean, I am a fan of living life and getting out in the community and being in the community. But if it is an enormous ordeal to get them back, I think it's probably time to focus more on the engagement within the building.
Thank you, David, for answering Betty's question on that. And Betty, we hope that you find that to be helpful. And we do have time for just a couple more questions. We had a kind of them flooding in, so if it sounds like I'm trying to rush through them, it's because we just got a bunch of questions at once. So we don't want to cut anyone off. I want to make sure we get to as many questions as possible, but we do have time for a couple more. We did have one come in, and this was an anonymous question. How do you present the option of help coming into your mother if she's very resistant? How do you let your loved one know that you need someone coming in to help? And I hear this question a lot, especially in the home care world. You know, the caregiver, the care partner wants help to come into the home for them, but their loved one that's going to be receiving the care becomes very resistant. So David, do you have any thoughts for this listener on that specific
Sure.
question?
You know, one of the things we all learn as a care partner is sometimes, Lakelyn, sometimes it's easier to get forgiveness than permission. and so, you know, I've had family members where you hire the worker and you give it a shot. You sometimes, you know, there's a little bit of subterfuge. Maybe the caregiver knocks on the door. Hey, my name's Bob. I'm a friend of your son, David. Wanted to come by and say hello. Sometimes spouses will hire someone to help them. Like, you know, honey, I've hired, you know, Glenda, and she's our new housekeeper, and she's here to help me, even though it's really for the husband. You know, sometimes you'll try to have this conversation. You'll hire someone, and it won't work out the first time. It won't work out the second time, but the third time, it's magic. So keep trying. One thing you can sometimes do is blame it on the doctor. Mom, I know you don't want this, Mom and Dad, but the doctor insists that this, you know, you need a little extra help. We'll try it for a few weeks. I've already paid them. Let's give it a shot. And you know, don't be a nag. Don't like bring it up every single day and cause a lot of conflict. If your parents are super resistant, well, mark your calendar, bring it up 2 weeks later or 3 weeks later or 2 weeks later, and eventually I hope it will make it work. When you get that engaging caregiver, they really do feel good. And I can't say how many times I've been with families where it's gotten off to a rough start. Maybe there's just not a good match the first time or two, but then they end up with a terrific in-home worker.
Those are some great points, David, and those are similar suggestions that I give to family caregivers as well. Yeah, saying, you know, this is a friend of mine, or I need the help. It would really help me out. Those kind of questions, or those kind of phrases, put kind of the not blame on the caregiver, but it makes it seem like the caregiver is really there for the professional help, is really there for the family care partner and not so much the person that's needing the care. But we also know that, you know, the sooner you can get multiple people in the caregiving situation, whether it's having a friend come over every so often or other family members in, they get used to having multiple people helping them out early on, maybe in their diagnosis or disease process. And then, you know, as they're needing more help, sometimes they become more open to increasing amounts of care and support from maybe an outside professional, or allow more friends and family to chip in. So, you know, sometimes the earlier you can introduce that professional help or another helping hand into the situation, the more successful it can be in the long run in providing consistent respite to the main caregiver. So some great points there.
Thank you, Lakelyn. My dad, Fred, passed away in 2012, and he did not have dementia, but he got kind of frail. And we actually hired a homestead worker, Lakelyn, to come and help him on weekends. And this wonderful young man, really, really sweetheart. And I said to my dad, how wonderful, Dad, that you're helping him out. You know, he's in school part-time. It's so great that you're giving him a job. He really needs this, and how great that you're helping him. And that was such a revolutionary thing. My dad now felt that he was helping the caregiver, not so much the caregiver was helping him. So, you know, you do what you do, but it was very sweet that my dad, that really kind of helped him go from no to yes.
Oh, I like that example. Yeah, making it seem like they're helping out the caregiver, the person that's actually providing the care. That's a great story, David. Thanks for sharing that. So as the last couple questions come in, I think we have time for about one more question. So if you're out there thinking of a question, please type it in. We'll go to our resource slide, because we don't want to just give you all these great tips and then not follow up with resources. So if you want to learn more about David's book, The Best Friends Approach, you can visit his site, bestfriendsapproach.com. And David, I see a picture there. Is that your latest book, A Dignified Life?
We have two books that particularly might be interesting for the callers. The Dignified Life book by Virginia Bell, David Troxel, is our book for family members. And we actually have a brand new book that came out about a year and a half ago called The Best Friends Approach to Dementia Care. That's written more, Lakelyn, for professionals, but families, particularly who have a loved one or family member in assisted living or using services, might enjoy that newer book called A Best Friends Approach to Dementia Care. But the Dignified Life book is easily available. It's on Kindle and inexpensive, and that's a great start for families.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for giving us more information on that, David. And David, also, you have a Facebook page. We have it listed up there. The Best Friends Approach is what the Facebook page is called. So if you'd like to follow that, please go out to Facebook and give it a like. We also have a Facebook page for this community, Remember for Alzheimer's. So you can like us on there. On our Facebook page, we promote these live chats, so you can get a link to the recording out on that site. And our helpforalzheimersfamilies.com website is another great resource. I mentioned earlier in our chat that on that site we have a free family Alzheimer's training online. So if you want to learn more about the disease or the symptoms, how to help your loved one best manage those, you can go online and watch that training. And then there's a book, Confidence to Care, that has a coinciding website and app, so you can check that out. And then caregiverstress.com has lots of great tips. There's especially holiday tips out on that site. So if you go to caregiverstress.com and type in the keyword holiday, you can get even more tips on how to make caregiving during the holiday season more manageable in terms of your caregiver stress. And then if you're thinking of hiring in-home care, you can visit our website at homeandsid.com. We can find an office nearest you by doing a zip code search on that website, and we're happy to answer any questions that you might have about in-home care. And finally, the Alzheimer's Association's website, alz.org, they always have great information on there, all things Alzheimer's and dementia related. And David, we're almost up to the end of our hour, but we did have somebody write in one last question. So Francesca asks, how do you afford long-term care? And that's a great question. There's a lot of misconceptions sometimes around how much care costs, whether it's in the home or in a long-term care setting. David, do you have any initial thoughts or any resources that Francesca can go to?
Well, you raise a huge problem, Francesca, and I wish I had an easy answer because, many of the services are private pay. A couple of thoughts I have, though, in terms of just resources. Certainly this is the time to talk to the Alzheimer's Association. They may have some ideas for you. There's a website that I think the U.S. government sponsors called benefitscheckup.org, where you can type in someone's name and I think their social security number, and it can actually search government databases to see if they are a veteran, if they have certain social security benefits or other kinds of benefits that might come into play. I'm a big fan of what we call geriatric care managers, who are typically nurses or social workers who you pay by the hour, but can often help you look at different resources as well. And of course, long-term care insurance, which, may be too late now for you or for your family member, that can also provide some benefits. So, do some research, talk to your area agency on aging, your Alzheimer's Association, maybe hire a care manager, a geriatric care manager to help you kind of assess things, and hopefully you can figure out some paths for success.
David, those are great resources. I like that, benefitscheckup.org. Or is it .org or .gov? We'll look that up and
I'm sorry,
chat that
you're
over.
right. It might be, I'm not sure, it might be .gov. Thank you. I missed that.
Yeah.
But you can Google it and find it, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So those are great resources. I was jotting a few of those down myself. But we also, on our helpforalzheimersfamilies.com website, there's a grant application for an in-home care grant. So if your loved one has Alzheimer's or dementia and you are wanting some respite, please go out and apply for that respite grant. Again, it's on that the website that's listed third on your screen, helpforalzheimersfamilies.com. And that grant is a partnership between Hilarity for Charity and Home Instead Senior Care. So again, that's another resource if you're looking for an in-home care option. And then I also know that Genworth does a cost of care study. So if you're looking at kind of national averages, or you can even do a search by, I think, city or zip code on their site, just to kind of get a feel for, how much care costs, especially if you're having that family meeting that we talked about earlier in today's chat, David. We talked about, it's a great time of year to have a family meeting. Sometimes going out to that Genworth cost of care calculator can be helpful in aiding those family discussions. So great resources there, David. And real quick before we wrap things up, I do want to share next month's live chat information. So we're actually going to wrap up the year with our last chat on December 11th, and we're going to just have an Ask Us Anything chat. That's the topic. So we didn't want to focus on any one caregiving topic in particular. We wanted to just open it up to our audience to take anything, any questions related to caregiving, especially Alzheimer's and dementia caregiving. And I'll be joined by Molly Carpenter. David knows Molly, and she's author of Confidence to Care. So we hope that you will join us. And if you have any questions, please feel free to send us questions at our live chat at homeinstead.com email address. You can email us about today's chat, or if you have a question for next month's live chat, you can give us an email, again, at livechat@homeinstead.com. So we hope to see you all on December 11th. But David, thank you so much for joining me today and talking about caregiving during the holiday season. It's been so great hearing from you. You have so much good advice and tips. You're so experienced in this area, and so I'm just grateful that you were able to join us today.
Well, thank you, Lakelyn. And the famous dementia researcher, Tom Kitwood, once said that caregivers are physicians of the human spirit, physicians of the human spirit. So I want to thank everybody on this call and acknowledge the work you do and your caring and love. And I'm giving you all honorary doctorates today, so you can all be honorary physicians of the human spirit.
Oh, I love that. Honorary physicians of the human spirit. And how true is that phrase or that quote? Thank you for sharing that with us, David. I hope that you all that are listening today have a wonderful holiday season. I hope that you're able to take some tips away from today's chat to help make your holiday celebrations meaningful and joy-filled. We hope that you get to spend time with your loved one, whether it's at their care facility or bringing them to the home or enjoying the holidays in the home setting. So with that, we will send you on your way for the day, and we look forward to seeing you back on December 11th. Have a great day and a great holiday season, everyone. Take care. Bye.